5 years ago, the citizens of the UK went to the polls to vote on whether or not to leave the European Union. The decision was a non-binding referendum, and it came as a shock to many when the results were in favor of leaving the EU. At the time, the majority of onlookers saw it as little more than an opportunity to silence a vocal minority. However, the decision to leave the EU had far-reaching implications for the UK and its economy.
The cost of food imported from the European Union after Brexit increased dramatically.
In this video, we'll be taking a closer look at the economic impact of Brexit on the UK and what it means for the country's future. 4.5 years later, after a long and drawn-out period of negotiations, the UK finally left the EU, ending its 47 years of membership. At the time, there were widespread concerns about what this would mean for the country. People were worried about not being able to travel back and forth with the EU. Businesses catering to frequent travelers were concerned about shutting down, and there were fears about the living standards of average Brits. Unfortunately, these concerns have come true to some extent. The UK has seen a decrease in travel and an increase in tariffs and trade barriers with the EU, leading to struggles for businesses and individuals. The UK has also seen a decline in the value of its currency, the pound sterling.
Now, the British pound has fallen to its lowest level ever against the US dollar,
which has made it more expensive for people traveling to and from the UK, as well as for businesses importing and exporting goods. This has led to a decrease in tourism and an increase in prices for consumers. The UK has also lost access to certain trade agreements and markets that it had as a member of the EU. The country has also faced challenges when it comes to exporting goods and services to EU countries, which have been a key market for UK businesses in the past. This has led to a decrease in exports and a loss of business for many UK companies. Another major concern was the future of the UK's trading relationship with the EU, which has been the largest market for UK goods and services. The EU is the UK's largest trading partner, and the UK is the EU's second largest trading partner. The UK's withdrawal from the EU Single Market and Customs Union, which came into effect at the end of 2020, has led to additional tariffs and barriers on trade between the UK and the EU, which has further increased the cost of trade for businesses in the UK. Finally, the UK's withdrawal from the EU has also raised concerns about the future of the country's labor market. The UK has benefited from the free movement of people within the EU, allowing businesses to recruit workers from other member states. With the end of free movement, it's becoming harder for UK businesses to recruit workers from other EU countries. This is a concern for businesses that rely on workers from other EU countries and for workers who came to the UK from other EU countries and now face an uncertain future. But it's not just Brexit that's causing these hardships. The global pandemic hit the UK particularly hard during the lead-up to the actual exit day. This makes it difficult to determine how much of the economic struggles are due to Brexit and how much is due to the pandemic. By the same logic, it makes it difficult to determine if the promises made by Brexit supporters were founded in reality. It's impossible to know how much the UK would have struggled economically without the pandemic, but it's clear that both have had a significant impact. The pandemic has led to widespread job losses, business closures, and a decrease in consumer spending, which has further exacerbated the economic struggles caused by Brexit. The UK's ability to recover from the pandemic and the economic downturn caused by it is also being hindered by the additional challenges posed by Brexit. The pandemic has also had a negative impact on the UK's service sector, which makes up a large portion of the country's economy. The service sector, which includes industries like finance, tourism, and retail, has been hit hard by the pandemic, with businesses shutting down and consumer spending decreasing. This has led to a decline in GDP, which is a measure of a country's economic output. It's worth mentioning that the pandemic has made it hard to predict the impact of Brexit on the UK, as it's hard to know what would have happened if the pandemic had not occurred. But as the world slowly recovers from it, the long-term impacts of Brexit will become clearer. In the years between the referendum and the actual exit from the EU, one of the biggest issues facing the UK was the uncertainty of what a post-Brexit UK would actually look like. There were a range of conflicting theories, from it being some kind of utopia to it being Armageddon. The unknown outcome was just as concerning as the potential negative outcomes. This uncertainty made it difficult for businesses and individuals to plan for the future. leading to a lack of investment and slow economic growth. Businesses were hesitant to invest in new projects or expand their operations due to the uncertainty of what the future would bring. Many companies also had to spend a lot of time and resources preparing for the new rules and regulations that came with Brexit, which was a significant distraction from growing their businesses. This lack of investment and slow economic growth has led to a decrease in productivity and a decline in GDP.
GDP fell 0.3% in April after a drop of 0.1% in March. The data suggests it's the first time that all of the economy's main sectors contributed negatively to a monthly GDP estimate since January 2021.
The uncertainty also led to a lack of confidence among consumers, which has led to a decrease in consumer spending. With people not knowing what to expect, they were more hesitant to spend money on big purchases or investments. This has also led to a decline in the housing market, as many people were hesitant to buy or sell property. The lack of consumer confidence also affected the retail and service sectors, as people were less likely to spend money on non-essential items or services. The uncertainty of Brexit also affected the country's workforce. Many people from other EU countries working in the UK were unsure about their future and whether they would be able to continue working in the country. This led to a decrease in the number of EU citizens working in the UK, which has created labor shortages in certain industries. In summary, the uncertainty of a post-Brexit UK has led to a lack of investment, slow economic growth, and a decline in productivity, GDP, and consumer confidence, which has had a significant impact on the country's economy. One of the biggest and most immediate impacts of Brexit is on trade. The EU is first and foremost a union of free trade, with member countries agreeing to trade amongst one another without levying tariffs or imposing import quotas. This is made even easier by the fact that all of the remaining members use the same currency, the euro. But as an outsider, the UK now faces harsh trade restrictions and tariffs, which is especially bad for a country as dependent on trade as the UK. This has led to a decrease in exports, an increase in costs for businesses and consumers, and a loss of investment and economic growth. The UK's withdrawal from the EU has resulted in tariffs being imposed on UK goods and services exported to the EU. This has led to an increase in costs for UK businesses and has made it harder for them to compete with businesses based in the EU. The tariffs have also led to an increase in prices for consumers, which has further decreased consumer spending. Another factor that has to be considered is the Northern Ireland Protocol. The protocol is an agreement that aims to avoid a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, which is an EU member state. However, it has caused trade barriers between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK, with the necessity of customs and regulatory checks on goods going from Northern Ireland to Great Britain. This has led to delays and increased costs for businesses in Northern Ireland and the UK, and it's seen as a significant impact on trade and the economy. In summary, the UK's withdrawal from the EU has led to tariffs and trade barriers on trade between the UK and the EU, which has further increased the costs of trade for businesses in the UK and negatively impacted the country's economy. So, there you have it. The impact of Brexit on the United Kingdom's economy is still uncertain and difficult to determine. But it's clear that it has had a significant effect on trade, as well as on uncertainty, travel, and living standard of citizens. It's caused increased tariffs and trade barriers with the EU, a decline in the value of the pound, a decrease in travel, a loss of access to certain trade agreements and markets, and uncertainty for businesses and individuals. This not only makes it difficult for businesses and individuals to plan for the future, but also puts the country's ability to recover from the pandemic in question. We hope you found this video informative. Thanks for watching.